It's time to answer the age-old question. Does gear matter for video on YouTube? Yes, kind of, but only to a certain point. Certain gear will absolutely make your videos more watchable. They'll definitely make them more hearable depending on the audio and video equipment that you use. But does any of that help get your message across? Are you reaching the audience that you're trying to reach with the message that you're trying to deliver? The beauty of our modern age is that you can literally start with the phone that's in your pocket. Pretty crazy. You can literally just start recording and post it directly to YouTube for potentially anybody on the internet to see. Isn't that crazy? Speaking of crazy things, I wonder if I could still do a pull-up. Oh yeah, I could still do a few. I don't work out as hard as I used to, but we could still get it. So on one hand, gear is totally awesome. Different kinds of gear like cameras and lenses and drones and all sorts of stuff like that lets you tell your story in a different kind of way. It lets you see your vision the way that you see it in your mind. And you get to share that vision with other people in almost the direct way that's in your brain. Now, and I also say this as a person that totally loves gear. Like, I love gear, okay? I'm a bit of a gearhead. Upgrading from the Panasonic G7 to the Sony a7 IV was, that was a huge jump for me. Huge jump. But it remains to be seen, of course, if that actually will make any of the videos that much more watchable or that much more interesting. The autofocus is a lot better, I will say. The flip side of all of that, though, is that gear is sometimes not awesome. Gear costs a lot of money, okay? It definitely costs a lot of money. Gear, of course, has physical space, and for every new piece of gear that you pick up, you have to learn how to use that gear. So there's the actual time investment of learning how to do it. So there are pluses and minuses. Speaking of cool shots, it would be really neat to have like a drone shot or something right now, but I am kind of in a pretty forested area, so that might make things a little bit difficult. Instead, I can just go as wide as possible, which is 28 millimeters, not very wide, and give you an idea of where we're at, where we're walking today. Basically just a big old trail in the forest. Every so often there are these like structures. I think these were like meant for swings. And then I think this was like meant for like sitting or something. All right, so I was gonna show you this like wood thing, right? Whatever this thing is. But I'm a little bit heavy. I'm like 220 pounds, and it started like creaking when I got on there, so not the most ideal. Right, so we're back at it. Gear costs money, and good gear costs a lot of money. When I first got into like cameras and YouTube and stuff, I thought like the biggest expense would actually be like the camera bodies itself, right? Actually, it's lenses. Good glass, good lenses are very, very expensive. Sometimes maybe even more so than the camera body, depending on what camera body you're getting. For reference, this is the 28-70 kit lens that comes with the a7 IV. It's okay. Is it doing an okay job? It does have OSS, optical steady shot. That's what it stands for. Are we steady? Steady enough. I'm using the tripod stick. It's working okay. But yes, gear costs money. And sometimes it can be really hard to even determine what you should invest on in the first place. Now, I know, always standard disclaimer, right? If you're just doing YouTube for fun, I wouldn't worry so much about gear. Just use what you do have. But if you're trying to do it more professionally, or you're trying to do it for like your business or something like that, it would be wise to invest in your gear. I cannot count the number of times that I bought the cheap version of something only for it to break, and then I end up getting the nicer version of it, and maybe I should have just got the nice version of it to start with. Everyone's like actual monetary situation is totally different, all right? Definitely don't spend money that you don't have on gear. It's not that important. Now that's just one cost, being like, physical money. The other thing is that gear costs space, right? Like it takes up physical space. How's our dynamic range, by the way? I'm definitely backlit right now. We're shooting in auto because I have stones for hands and don't want to readjust things every 5 seconds on manual. Thank you very much, Sony. How's the autofocus? Hopefully great, because it should be capturing my eye as we're going along. Just trying to walk very carefully. Gonna go up a little bit of a hill here. Gearheads definitely know what I'm talking about, right? Like gear takes up a lot of space, like actual physical space. Talking like, any sort of genre though, right? Like video games, like cars, like computer parts. Like you start buying so many like little and small things, and it's even worse with camera gear because there's lights, there's tripods, There's microphones, there's cameras, there's lenses, like especially like the tripods and stuff, right? They take up a ton of floor space, and especially when you're living in something like an apartment, you don't have that much room to play with. And if you do happen to have a partner, they start to ask questions like, hey, what is all of this for? What are you using all of this gear for? Why do you have all this stuff? Why do I keep on getting Amazon boxes? And it starts to drive them a little bit crazy. But when you are tight on space, especially in like a studio environment, you have to think very carefully about the gear that you're getting from a space perspective, because you can only take up so much space. For instance, if you have something like 3 separate lights that are all on tripods, that might take up a pretty good sized room in any sort of apartment. And you also have to think about being able to get behind all of those like cameras and lights and computers. You're gonna have to plug in and unplug and replug things a million times. So another reason that gear is maybe not so awesome is that it does take up a ton of space as you start to collect things. Now, of course, like this doesn't happen all at once. Like I have slowly accumulated gear over time, over many years of working on YouTube and being an editor. For a video editor, I have a lot of gear, maybe too much gear. But for a video guy, I don't have that. I've seen some of you guys. You know what doesn't take a lot of fancy gear though? Liking the video. It helps out a ton with the algorithms that YouTube can say, hey, this video's pretty okay. I think I was supposed to say like howdy squids in the beginning, by the way. So we have established that gear costs money, duh. Gear also costs space, but one that I think that a lot of people don't think about is that gear costs time. There's a learning curve for each piece of gear that you get. Each piece of gear that you get, you have to learn, especially when it's a larger item, like a brand new camera or something. Like if you are used to, for instance, a Panasonic and you pick up a Sony camera, there is a much steeper learning curve. Like yes, ISO is ISO, shutter speed is shutter speed, white balance, when I can figure it out, is white balance. But when there's like a totally new menu system to learn, or especially anything software related, there's a pretty steep learning curve. Now, thankfully for something like a lens, it's a little bit easier and most things transfer over just fine. But each new piece of gear that you pick up, especially with video that has so many different facets of it, you have to learn each and every piece. Video, audio, lighting, there's a ton of stuff to learn when it comes to video. And as you start to accumulate this gear, you have to learn how to use it and, maybe more importantly, when to use it. Okay, I actually have to watch where I'm going now because we're going through this scary tunnel. Ooh. Hey guys, it's me, scary investigator guy. Is there a ghost in this tunnel? If you are a scary ghost, you have to say so. Gets them every time. See, if there's a spooky ghost, they would have had to say so. And just like that, found a cool little place to sit, take a rest, drink some water. All right, now we take a little break. Even if we're kind of sort of next to the road, so hopefully there's not too many car noises. Now, I know it sounds like I've been totally dunking on gear so far, but like I said, I like gear a lot. I'm kind of a gearhead. And cameras is a great area that you can just get in way over your head with way too much gear. I'm not like a corporate shooter usually, but anytime that I've done those events, I need like a camera body and a lens, 2 lenses, another camera body, like 2 tripods, 4 kinds of audio. It can add up really, really quickly. But say that you're like brand new to YouTube and you want to pick just like 1 or 2 things to get started. Now for me, it depends on what kind of shooting that you're going to be doing. If you're going to be shooting inside of like a controlled area, like a room or a studio setup, then basically your phone will totally do. I would invest in a good lighting kit and I would invest in good audio first. Now, if you're gonna be more out and about and you want to be, shooting in the wilderness, then maybe a camera with a kit lens would probably be a pretty good way of going about it. Basically with the camera and the lens and maybe like a Video Micro Go or something like that, you're pretty much good to go outside and start making videos, start making movies, whatever kind of thing that you want to do or share with YouTube. Now I can finally get some water. All right, here, you want some? That's some high quality H2O. Okay, back on the trail we go. No more break time, you got enough water, right? So I like to think of gear as more of a cup. Better gear will make your cup larger, but when it comes to YouTube especially, you need a certain level of liquid, right? And it's up to you to actually fill up that cup with liquid. that doesn't quite sound right. But the liquid is the skills and techniques that you use to actually take that video. An amateur with professional equipment is probably not going to outdo a professional with even the most basic gear. Learning your gear, whatever you have, wherever you have it, is pivotal for growing as a storyteller, as a videographer, as an editor. No matter what you're doing, you have to actually practice with the stuff that you have. And the great thing about practicing with stuff that you have is that you learn very quickly, especially in the field, you learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and maybe what things you should get to up your skill level. A totally cool like side effect bonus of working with other YouTubers and working with other people who are into like photography and video gear is that if you ask very nicely and treat their stuff nicely, they might let you borrow the gear. And then you can definitely figure it out, hands-on experience, what does work for you and what doesn't work for you. Or what you can dream about, like your dream $10,000 million lens. I'm looking at you, Red cameras. One day maybe. So does gear matter? Well, yes, but I honestly wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're somewhat in focus and there's some kind of audio source that's basically picking you up, then you should more or less be able to tell your story. You should be able to make something that's funny or entertaining or informative, whatever genre that you happen to be in, with whatever you have. And as you go along, you can progress your gear with your skills. And that's what I actually suggest. Grow your gear with your skills. Now that you have the lowdown on gear, you might start thinking, all right, I've got all the essential stuff to get 1 million views on YouTube. But does 1 million views even pay that well? You can find out by checking out this video right here to learn how much I made with 1 million views. That's not hyperbole, it's right here. Thank you, squids.